Welcome to the 2020 Awards podcast. Today we are joined by screenwriter George Wing, who wrote the Adam Sandler film 51st Dates and the indie film Outsourced, which went on to spawn the NBC comedy of the same name, which he also wrote. We've asked George to join us today to talk about his creative process. Welcome, George.
Hi, Chris.
Why don't we just, first of all, talk about how you got into showbiz.
Oh, well, as we discussed in another podcast, somewhere in my teens, I saw the movie Diva, and I realized that people get to make movies for a living. Okay, that's what I want to do. And then it's been a long journey. I went to NYU Film School, figuring that they would teach me to make movies there.
Yeah.
And I quickly figured out that even though I was learning how to use all the equipment, that the art of storytelling was not being emphasized. So I sort of wiggled out of the film production side there and wiggled into the playwriting department.
Oh, okay.
Which was also covered screenwriting. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The dramatic writing program.
Yeah.
And focused on that because I just somehow knew that my path into filmmaking would be through the storytelling as a screenwriter first, then as a director. Have I directed a feature film yet? No. Still working on that. And still learning a lot about screenwriting, and it's a never-ending process of self-education.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been particularly easy for me to break in. I struggled for many years and wrote spec script after spec script, and finally started winning a few contests and making a few small option deals, and it was a long, gradual dues-paying process. And at a certain point, I quit my day job, even though I couldn't really afford to do so, and I think I was down to my last $900 in the bank when I sold my spec script, which was then called 50 First Kisses, to Columbia Pictures for a nice, big, fat six-figure sum, and life changed immediately. I suddenly had access to everyone in Hollywood, and it was a hot script for a while, and it got me years of work, and it was a full immersion in the industry as a screenwriter, and I learned how to make a left turn in LA and
not easy to do.
Stuff.
That's almost harder than breaking in.
Yes, indeed. And I learned how the business works and kept writing and did all kinds of different things. And
you mentioned you went from $900 in the bank to six figures, but you kind of skimmed over how that happened. So how does one have a script that suddenly becomes a hot property?
Well, it is always a seller's market in the film business. If you can get a story on paper that works, someone will immediately buy it and make it. There is no barrier to entry for great material, truly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a myth that it's so competitive and it's so hard to get something great made. I mean, it's not hard to get something great made. It's hard to get something good made. Or pretty good, or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us writers delude ourselves into thinking our material is ready for the market when it just isn't.
Yeah.
With that particular script, I thought I was writing a tiny little independent film to be made in Seattle. I said it here.
Yeah.
It wound up in Hawaii for reasons I may go into or may not.
Adam Sandler just want to work in Hawaii?
Well, that's it. Yeah.
I mean,
he had recently taken up surfing.
Perfect.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So my heart was in it, truly in it. I wasn't thinking, is this commercial or not commercial?
Right.
Will I ever sell this to a studio? No, I just tried to amuse myself, and I think it wound up tighter and sweeter as a piece of work. I mean, my script was very different from the movie that was made.
I was going to say I've read the script, I've seen the movie. I noticed the script had a lot less fart and barf jokes than the script did.
I wonder where this came from.
Than the movie did,
yes.
Yeah.
So when you sold the script, did you stay on to do rewrites, or they did the rewrites? How does that process work?
Well, it works differently every time, and I've been through this many times, but in this particular case, I had several rewrites in my contract, and wonderful director, Jay Roach, came on, and I worked on some rewrites with him. But then there was a studio upheaval. The executive who had bought the script went away, and the new executive happened to be the Adam Sandler guy. He said, this will be Adam's next movie, and that made Jay Roach vanish. because for his own reasons, he did not want to direct an Adam Sandler film. And then Adam and his favorite writers came in and did their pass on it.
What was that like?
I'm going to choose my words carefully. Actually, they were not the only writers. As some punch-up guys, I shouldn't call them that. A team of comedy writers who I will not name did their pass on it. And at the end of the day, there were a lot of writers who had their way with the script, but because of the intricacies of the Writers Guild arbitration rules, my name wound up on the movie as the sole writer, written by.
Oh.
And that has a lot to do with the fact that I originated it. If you originate a screenplay that's not based on something else, you have a lot more clout when it comes time to determine the credits. But the movie, probably very little dialogue is mine, but the characters, the scenes, the rhythm of it, the structure of the situation, all of that I did originate.
So did you have an agent? Is that how you got the script sold?
I had won a screenwriting contest and gotten an agent through that. And this was the next thing I wrote. And she loved it, and she brought in a manager. She was, I didn't know it at the time, but she was considering scaling back her activities, moving to New York, and stepping out of the Hollywood-based, the LA-based film business. And so she brought in a manager who represented me for a while also. So yeah, we went out to the studios with it without any actors attached, which you try not to do that these days. But at the time, I think we had Jay Roach attached. And it wasn't really a bidding war, which is what we screenwriters live for, but there was a modest bidding situation.
Yeah.
So we went with Columbia. And Drew Barrymore and her company tried to buy it from me, and I wish I had gone with them, actually, to be honest, because they were going to make a more pure version of what I had originally written. So that, and then doors were open for me, and I took a lot of these get-acquainted meetings, and I looked at a lot of premises, because I'm very premise-driven. I can't get into a project unless I find the core premise to be delightful. I managed to get a lot of attention for some of my stranger and more personal and quirky work because I had this high-profile mainstream movie going. I had this circus movie that all these directors over the years have attached themselves to, and it's just a ridiculously weird, bizarre script. I'm currently working with Greg Araki, trying to attract cast to make the movie with him. So I hope that gets done. That is called The Flying Smiths.
Right.
Yes.
I saw the script reading of that.
Yeah, it refuses to die and it refuses to get made. And
that's good.
I'm hopeful that this.
Well, I mean, it's good that it refuses to die, not that it refuses to get made. But yeah.
Yeah. So I settled into a sort of routine of doing work for the studios and doing my own quirkier independent stuff on the side. And over the years, people kept asking me to consider television, and I kept saying, no, thank you, I'm not really a TV guy. I don't have it in my house. I grew up without television. I don't know a thing about it. I love movies. And I managed to avoid the whole television thing until my movie Outsourced attracted the attention of a producer and director named Ken Kwapis, who directed the pilot of the NBC show The Office.
Right.
And he saw my movie, which is basically an office comedy set in India, and he said, let's make a show out of this. Mm-hmm. And his passion convinced us to go pitch it to all the networks.
Yeah.
Which we did. My partner, John Jeffcoat, and I. And it was pretty well received by enough people that we wound up making a deal at NBC, home of The Office. And then the writer's strike happened, and everything got weird, and then the writer's strike ended, and suddenly we had a greenlit pilot. And it got on the air. It survived for one season, was very nearly renewed, but didn't make the cut. So I got to watch that whole process of, from a certain distance, of television being made. And now I get it, and I would like to do some other show.
What did you learn from that?
The first thing that I learned is that I'm not a TV person. No, I still know nothing about it, and the network figured that out, and they brought in a showrunner who knew how to make television.
So when you say you're not a TV person, what do you mean by that?
Well, am I creatively able to be a showrunner? I think so. But there are so many other skills involved. I mean, you're given $50 million and told to go shoot 21 episodes in the next 9 months.
Yeah.
Can I oversee that? No.
Sure.
And it takes many years in the trenches, I think, to be ready to be a showrunner.
Yeah.
So with any future TV projects, I would definitely.
But as far as like coming up with storylines and as far as from the writing aspect of it, take out the showrunner, you feel confident in that? Or does that seem very different than features to you?
Well, it is very different. With a feature film, you come up with a great premise, and my goal is always to so fully realize that premise that a sequel would be impossible. Because you've asked some big metaphysical question, and then you solve it, and how do you possibly make a sequel?
That's not going to stop them.
That's right. Very often doesn't.
You're really killing a lot of opportunities, man.
In television, it's quite the opposite. You need to keep it going.
Yeah.
So it's based on characters that audiences want to keep hanging out and spending time with. And you have to be careful not to discharge all your attention and solve the problem.
Yeah.
That's why a show like Lost, well, I shouldn't go into a huge tangent, but that show was, for me, was all set up. They kept setting up the show year after year, season after season, and they got away with the sort of delights of setup.
Yeah.
Because the audience is expecting that it will all pay off at the end, and then it was over.
Yeah.
But in television, you have these sort of mini premises for each episode that you do have to discharge by the end of the episode. I think it's probably easier. I hope I don't offend any TV writers by saying that, but
you think it's easier than writing features?
Yes. Yeah. I had a local television writer tell me that feature film writing is kind of like a gentleman's game. Like you wake up and you may write something, you may not, and whatever. But the TV's a job.
Yeah.
You show up, you put in your hours, you crank out a product. You don't have time to indulge yourself.
Right.
And I think that would be good for me.
Are you not a disciplined writer?
I work a lot, but I have yet to find a routine in terms of hours of the day when I'm most productive. It actually doesn't seem to go very well with family life. I have 2 little kids, and just when I'm really picking up steam, it's time to pick them up from school or make dinner or something like that. Yeah. So I struggle with that. I'm trying to become a morning person right now. Yeah. Because if you wake up before everybody else, you get a lot more done.
That's what I hear.
You've heard that. Okay.
That's what I hear. I've never put that, to effect.
I was thinking about my method. I knew we were going to talk about this today, and what I've been thinking about lately is why do it at all? And I would encourage people actually to not write a screenplay.
Yeah.
Unless you've got something great that's burning to get out of you. And I try to apply that to myfyself. Just because I'm supposed to be a professional screenwriter, if I'm not truly inspired and on fire to do something, I shouldn't be trying. I shouldn't be fortunate.
Well, it's hard work.
It's very hard.
And it seems like that's the only way you can do it. I mean, at least for me, that's the only way. It's like, the idea of sitting down for weeks, if not months on end, to bang out something that may or may not be seen by anybody, you have to be passionate about it, I think.
It should be a fun process throughout.
Yeah.
When you start the rewrite, that's never fun because that's the painful part. That's where you see all your mistakes laid out before you.
True, but it's also, I know a lot of people, and it varies for me, but I think that a lot of people, when they see it in front of them, that's when they get excited because it's like, oh, now I have something that I can hold in my hand. It's tangible. Now I can go in and I can fix all the stuff that seemed like question marks to me.
Mm-hmm. But then it becomes very hard to throw away entire sequences that don't work that you've fallen in love with. So here's how I make it fun. I postpone the actual writing until the very last possible minute. I come up with a premise. For instance, lately I've been working on a comedy set at Burning Man. No one's made that.
Yeah, which is, I was wondering why that was the
Nobody
case.
wants to go to Burning Man to film it.
No,
this
I
one
don't
is
think that's
called,
true.
it's called A Burning Sensation. And
That's clever.
it's about three young guys, kind of a hangover type story. They go to
Yeah.
Burning Man, each
Yeah.
with a different agenda, and while they're there, they become convinced that an alien invasion is happening at Burning Man.
Uh-huh.
But half the people are dressed as aliens, and the other half are on drugs, and
Sure.
no one believes them.
Right.
So to me, that's funny.
Yeah.
So I start generating material around that. I'm not trying to structure a story too tightly yet, and get behind a character who's got a relatable problem, and then as I assemble notes, and I can assemble a giant stack of ideas, and I generally write in a notebook with a fountain pen rather than on a computer because that's more analog and somehow more creative for me. Then I start telling the story to people, and my goal is to be able to talk for about a half an hour and tell someone the whole movie. Mm-hmm. And if I start to lose them, and you can just tell when you're losing someone, they drift, their eyes drift away and they change the subject. If I start to lose them, I don't have the story yet.
Right.
They have to get more and more drawn in. And in fact, one of my techniques is actually my ideal victim is a stranger at a party because they're totally not invested in listening to me.
Yeah.
They say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Oh, I'm a screenwriter. Yeah, right now I'm writing a comedy about Burning Man." "Oh, really? Yeah. What's that about?" "Well, there's this guy who screwed up with his girlfriend. He's trying to win her back, but she's going to be at Burning Man because she's an artist, so he has to go there." I just start telling the story, and I just have to draw them in, hook them, and then in the middle, I'll sometimes say, "Anyway, then I don't want to take up too much of your time," and they'll be like, "No, what happens next?" Then I know I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
So I will try to get a verbally tellable story that totally, absolutely works, and by then it's pretty much outlined, scene by scene. And of course I've been constructing an outline to help me with the telling throughout. And this process could go on for months, and I'll put things down and work on other things. And then when I absolutely have it working like clockwork, I do this sort of a beat sheet of all these scenes in order, what happens in them. And then I write the screenplay in a week. I sit down and turn on the computer.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
That's pretty much what it takes.
Yeah.
I've timed myself over 7 or 8 different projects, and it's about 40 hours of actual drafting.
Yeah.
But by then, I know the material so well, dialogue already exists, and the thing that really works for me with this method is that the dialogue the characters tend to just speak great dialogue when it works because they've been developed enough that I really know them.
Right.
And so that saves me some pain. It really does. My first drafts for me tend to be better than the first drafts that I used to write before I undertook this method.
Yeah.
I used to start writing and see where it would take me, which I think is dangerous for
You'd be there forever,
a lot of people.
Yeah.
This is actually a more professional method. Professional screenwriters have to go through this process anyway with the studio executives and producers who are the obstacle to actually writing the first draft.
Right.
These days especially, they want to get a treatment out of you. They want to know where you're going. They don't want any surprises. And so this is the way that professionals work. Whereas amateurs tend to think that the goal is 110 pages bound with 3 brass brads and the beginning,
Right.
middle, and an end. Now the goal is that story that works like a Swiss watch, whether it's comedy, drama, whatever.
Sure.
And it should be tellable. If your story is not tellable, then the lower ranking studio executive who's trying to convince his boss or her boss can't turn around and retell it.
Right, exactly.
So this is the true currency of the film business. It's not a screenplay. It's a story.
Right.
And I have to keep reminding myself of that. Sometimes I forget, and I think, this time I can get away with I'll just write it. And not test it
Yeah.
with people. And that hasn't worked for me.
Okay.
So that's my method in a nutshell. Where do ideas come from? I don't know. Sometimes from the news. 50 First Kisses was based on a real medical problem. I sold a big pitch to New Line and Warner Brothers based on another real medical problem about a guy with low testosterone. Also that I saw in the newspaper. Some ideas are just randomly come to me, like the Burning Man aliens idea. My movie Outsourced, I did not come up with that. My partner John Jeffcoat had the idea, and as soon as he brought it to me, I said, I want to work with you on this. Let's just drop everything and do this.
Yeah. Your ideas tend to be a little bit more high concept in general from the stuff that you've pitched me.
Yeah, they can be high concept. They can also be too weird to ever get made, and that's something I struggle with.
Yeah, well, I kind of have that problem. My ideas tend to be kind of out there, but like I said, your stuff has always been sort of like it's had a very well grounded sort of. There's always like again, we were talking about Dave in an earlier podcast, the movie Dave, and I thought you would like it because it seems like something you would have written. It's like an everyman becomes the president for a few hours or a couple of months or whatever, and what's he going to do? How's he going to respond to that?
It's a feel-good movie, and I think all movies should be feel-good movies. I mean, you're paying how much money to feel bad? No, I don't want to feel bad. I want to feel good. And I think it's hard. I think it's easy to make people feel bad. I think it's harder to send you out of the theater with a wonderful, joyous, celebratory feeling. So that's what I always try to do.
Yeah.
And that can lead to endings that are too pat or too happy. But so be it. That's my niche.
People want it.
Yes.
I don't want to leave a movie with the couple doesn't get together. After all that effort we put into seeing them fall in love, right?
That's
it goes back to Roman Holiday, though.
Roman Holiday, one of my all-time favorite movies. The couple do not get together. They could if they chose to, but they're serving something larger than themselves. She's actually a princess, and she has her royal reputation and international relations between countries to think of. And he could serve his own career by publishing this expose on her, but he chooses to completely torpedo his own career by keeping his best piece of journalism quiet and not exposing it.
But it's a very satisfying ending.
It is very satisfying. You know that they've both been deeply touched, and they may contact each other at some point in the future.
At some point, we can hope that. But I do think that's one of those things that I think people confuse a happy ending with a satisfying ending.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be a happy ending in order to be satisfying.
Right.
Well, Casablanca.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Same thing. They go their separate ways, but
Mm-hmm.
they've been deeply touched by each other.
Yeah. But we understand why.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. My best friend's wedding. They do not get together. If I
They were never together.
Right, but your expectations are reversed by the ending of that.
Right.
I like that. More true to life.
She ended up with the more interesting person anyways, her gay best friend.
Never saw it.
Are you kidding? Oh,
No, never saw it. Yeah.
It's a fun movie.
I tend to not go see movies with wedding in the title.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I have this theory, which I think I've done preliminary studies. If a movie has the word love in the title, it's probably not very good, and it does not do very good business. But if a movie has the word wedding in the title, it's usually great and usually makes a lot of money. So you might want to rethink your... I swear it's true.
I believe you. I totally believe you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And one of the scripts I've been working on is called The Fucking Wedding, which...
That I would go see.
I think that's how everybody would describe a wedding, right? At some point.
It's about a man and a woman who have to plan a wedding together, but it's not their wedding. It's their best friend's wedding, and they hate each other. And in the course of planning a wedding, you can imagine what happens.
There you go, yeah.
What?
It's actually not my idea. I talked about how ideas can come from anywhere. I've been working with a writer from Argentina who has these great high concept ideas. I've optioned 2 of his, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
He's somebody who should live in Hollywood, and he's working his way toward Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's the thing with a lot of romantic comedies is you got to buy the premise.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, why are these 2 people who hate each other planning a wedding? Like, why would they be put in that position? But if you can make the audience believe that, then the rest of the movie works, right?
Yeah, I've got that one figured out for this. But yeah, that's the tricky part. I mean, romantic comedies come to a screeching halt if the couple can just be together. So you always need the new obstacle, and very often that's built into the premise. 50 First Kisses, she doesn't know who the hell he is, even though they're in love.
Right.
So I'm always looking for the great.
But I think that's true of any story. If you're not forcing these people into the situations, if they want to be there, then why are we watching this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there's a lot of movies that actually fail because the main character voluntarily goes into a situation and it's like instantly less interesting.
Yes. Like that movie 40 Days and 40 Nights. He makes a bet with his friend that he can go without sex for 40 days.
Oh,
He gives it up for Lent.
Yeah, but is that the...
So he gives it up for Lent because it's ruining his life.
But it's a decision that he makes on his own. And then he meets this girl, and she's wondering why the hell things are proceeding so slowly, and it starts to threaten their burgeoning relationship. But at any point, he could just throw away his
We could also just say he's giving it up for Lent.
Yeah, but it's weak. And yet that movie made $80 million, so I don't know why. But yeah, there has to be an obstacle, and the more insurmountable the obstacle, the better.
Who are your influences?
My influences. I tend not to think that way. My influences are any great movie that makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And
so what are some of those?
A strongly influential comedy that I saw when I was in high school was Breaking Away.
Oh, yeah.
Bicycle racing movie.
Yep.
And it for me, a movie always has to have an absurd or subversive element to it. And it's just completely ridiculous that this kid from Indiana has decided that he's an Italian bicycle racer.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not just a bicycle racer, but an Italian one. And that little twist suddenly makes it all work for me.
Yeah.
That's a movie with great heart. It's about, again, a singular passion. And I've watched it many times. Very feel-good ending, wonderful quirky characters.
It is very feel-good, but again, it's not like... Again, I thought we were talking about that earlier, the idea of rom-com or sitcom.
Oh, you said it again.
Yeah, and feel-good, I think, is another one of those terms that immediately like put people onto the defense if you were to say, like, this is a feel-good movie. I mean, there's some people who, like, they really want to see a feel-good movie, but I think there's just as many people that are like, ooh, feel-good movie. No. I must be, tortured when I sit down and see a film. And so when you say feel-good about Breaking Away, I feel like it is feel-good, but it's a very realistic film. There's nothing about it that comes across as like, we're here to cheer you up, and it's just sort of like, to me, I would never have used that expression to describe that film.
Oh, really? I think it's got a wonderful sort of arc to the main character who idolizes these Italian bicycle racers, and when they finally come to his hometown and he gets to ride with them, they turn out to be despicable cheats.
Right.
And his whole worldview is crushed, and but he grows.
That feels good when your whole worldview is crushed.
And he becomes a better person for it.
Yeah.
And then the very last shot is suddenly he's a French bicycle racer.
That's right.
Another movie that I absolutely love is Local Hero. I've seen that a gazillion times. That breaks a lot of rules of movies. It has a very passive protagonist. It's about a Texas oil executive whose mission is to go to a tiny Scottish village, buy the whole place so it can be destroyed, so an oil refinery can be built there. And
feels good already.
He's got enough money to buy the whole town. Yeah. And he's a lonely, isolated guy, and he goes there and he just falls in love with this place. And it gets under his skin, and then his mission becomes sort of something he can't really live with. And then he doesn't solve the problem. His boss does, which breaks all the rules of screenwriting. He just passively watches as his boss flies in and fixes everything. But it's such a sweet, wonderful, quirky movie that you just forgive it that, I think. But so I love movies that are gentle and sweet, but also hilarious. Mm-hmm. It has to be all three.
Yeah. That's funny because like everything you just said about what you look for in a movie, to me describes the main characters of all of your work.
Oh, not the Burning Man one, but thank you. I do think that I just read sometimes I get sent scripts to rewrite, and there is something that always happens in the Hollywood romantic comedy script that doesn't work yet that they need rewrite for. People tend to start the main character off as a complete jerk who needs to somehow change by the end of the movie. It's inevitably the woman who changes him. But it doesn't work because if you start out with an asshole, you don't like him and you don't invest yourself in the movie. You have to somehow get behind even someone who's behaving like a jerk immediately.
Yeah.
The first few minutes of a movie.
That's always a challenge because it's like you don't want to start somebody who's already at the end of their arc. But somehow you have to make them somebody you want to watch get to the end of their arc. And what can you do as a storyteller to kind of like help us go, hey, we know this guy's got problems, but bear with me.
Empathy is different from sympathy. You recently did Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
That's an interesting case study.
Yeah.
The guy is a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. We don't start to care for him until his problem begins.
Right.
And then we're suddenly on his side because we're totally in his point of view, and he changes in front of our eyes.
That's 30 minutes.
30 minutes in?
Yeah.
But do
Oh.
you think because like a lot of times a bad character or a mean character is fun to watch, and so we kind of jump on his side automatically because we're rewarding that behavior. Like he was funny, and I want to keep watching this guy do jerky, funny things.
Yes, funny goes a long way.
Yeah.
Funny is seductive.
Think
Yeah.
of in Harry Met Sally. Like the Harry character at the beginning wasn't that great of a guy, but you liked him. He was a funny
Right.
guy.
Yeah, I think funny is always the answer. Casablanca, Rick is not a good guy. He's totally selfish. He's in it for himself.
But he's got great one-liners.
Yes, he's got great dialogue, and you actually don't meet him until a lot of other people have talked about him.
Right.
So
Oh,
there's
right.
this. He's infused with this mystique already.
Right.
But yeah, the two hardest things in writing a movie are getting the audience behind your main character and coming up with a brilliant original premise in the first place. And neither one is optional.
Are you working on anything else these days besides the Burning Sensations?
Oh, sure. I always have a lot going on. Have been talking with Fox Animation about adapting a graphic novel called Cardboard. I'm not sure if I have the job yet, but I went down there and pitched, and it went very well. That would be my first animation writing job, and I'm excited
That would be
to
a
do
series, right?
that. No, this would be a feature film.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's from the company that brought us the Ice Age movies.
Okay.
Right.
It's called Blue Sky. Very nice people. And with John Jeffcoat, who I made Outsourced with, I have a long simmering project called Lonely Planet about global travel that I hope to make with him. I'm very close to finishing a draft of that. Yeah, and the whole inspiration for it was that the gear that you need to make a movie fits in your backpack now.
Oh.
And it doesn't have to cost that much.
Yeah.
You can have a tiny crew. In fact, John Jeffcoat, who I want to work on this with, he just made a movie in Japan for a very modest budget
Yeah.
with the Canon 5D camera that's the size of a pomegranate.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to apply for permits, or
Yeah.
you can shoot a scene in a public park and people don't need to know you're
Right.
making a movie. So yeah, John was successful in making a feature film in Japan in just a few weeks with a very tiny crew. And he is finishing the movie as we speak in post-production. So that was perfect training to do this project. So
Yeah.
I hope we get to make that soon.
Yeah.
Like any busy writer, I have a lot of side projects that I keep coming back to. Some television ideas that for shows to be made here in Seattle, all comedies, of course, and a project that I would like to direct myself, which is one of these impossibly quirky, bizarre feature comedies that I just absolutely love, but it's going to have to come together in just the right way if I ever hope to get it made.
So you haven't given up the directing bug?
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
No, it's just career concerns, family concerns.
Yeah.
It's somewhat self-indulgent to stop working and making money and just put everything into your own project, but if I'm ever going to do it, now is probably the time. So.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say to any writers who happen to be listening, and this is my latest obsession, is don't think of it as the studio world and the independent world as the only two playgrounds you get to include in your thoughts. Think of the whole planet. And there's all these really interesting film industries out there. And just like ours, they're desperate for stories. I almost got a movie made in India recently, in Hindi, singing and dancing, like a Bollywood musical.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that didn't have. There was a tragic accident, and the director fell off a horse and died.
Oh.
And that put the brakes on.
Another feel-good story.
South Korea, they make amazing movies there, and I do have a story that I hope to try to get made in South Korea because I think Hollywood won't make it until they see that it's a success in Asia. It's kind of a weird, bizarre horror film. But I think it would be a stretch to get it made here.
Yeah.
So if I ever get around to that one, I will try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, that's a good thought.
in Europe in general, I've come close a couple times with getting projects set up in Europe, and it is a more sensible way of making movies. It's not a feast or famine situation. No one makes a ton of money, but the director and writer have more power, and they tend to be more respected and tend to work together as a team throughout the life of a project. Africa has this crazily energetic, booming film scene. I guess it's really a video scene, but feature films, or I think the Seattle Film Festival is focusing on Africa this year.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Because of all the fascinating content coming out of there.
Yeah.
So if you have an original story that for whatever reason doesn't work in the U.S. market, keep looking.
Yeah. Good advice.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks for joining us, George.
Nice to do this. Thanks for asking me.
Glad we finally wrangled you out of your home to come out and talk to us. If you're a movie lover and would like to support us, you can subscribe to the 2020 Film Club. Your annual subscription gets you into 10 of our monthly for your consideration screenings here in Seattle, plus a ticket to our annual ceremony in February. Over $100 value for only $40. To enroll, just visit us at the2020awards.org and look for the subscriber link. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to start thinking about the past.